Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. In the description of this video, you can find my compiled link. Through there, you can find ways to support the channel, my other social media, and more. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. How's it going, everybody? CJ here, back with another video. We're doing a top 10 today. Today, we're going to go through Double Masters and talk about the top 10 best reprints for Commander. Lots of great choices in this set. The set's full of very high value reprints, super exciting set, and lots to talk about today. I want to do a quick honorable mention, Warrior's Oath. This card was $500 before the reprint, although it was not seen in a lot of EDH decks. It's still big reprint here, and those that play Obeka or decks similar to that can finally afford a copy. Fantastic, love it, great reprint, but didn't make the list just because there's so few commanders that actually want the card in that style of effect. So just an honorable mention here because of how much money this card was. And now we're just going to jump into this list, starting with number 10. Number 10 on the list is Force of Negation. This card is fantastic. It's a free counter spell, great modern reprint as well. It's the stats I'm going to be talking about are all from EDH Rec. And so the card is in 55,770 decks on EDH Rec. That's 9% of all blue decks. So this card sees a lot of play. And it was $75 about that before the reprint. So money card that sees a lot of play, great reprint. In Commander, there are a lot of cards that have a similar effect. So it's not higher on the list because of that. Like there's just a lot of cards that do the same thing in Commander. But it's still a great reprint for Commander, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to pick up copies now that weren't able to pick up copies before because of the price. This card sees lots of play, but not as much play as a lot of the other cards on this list, hence it being at number 10. It's great reprint though, and very happy to see it. Now we're on to number 9. The 9th best reprint for Commander, in my opinion, in this set is Fyrexian Alter. This card is one of the best sacrifice outlets in the entire format. You can sacrifice a creature to add a colored mana of your choice. Amazing card here. And it was very expensive. $90 about for a copy. And it's also the first specialty printing of the card. The first time it gets a cool pimped out version. So very exciting there too. It's in less decks than Force of Negation. This is the second fewest number of decks out of everything that's on this list. It's at 44,808 decks. And that's 4% of all decks because it is colorless. But I think one of the reasons why it's so few decks compared to some of the other cards we're going to be talking about today is probably because of the price. Like this card has always been expensive, so it's always been hard for people on more of a budget to be able to include this card in their decks. So this reprint is going to be fantastic. It's a great card, great sacrifice card. Sacrifice is a huge archetype. Anything that has to do with sacrificing, this card can go in any deck because it's colorless, beautiful, great reprint. One of my favorite cards. It's also a combo enabler, like big time combo card with cards like Gravecrawler. So very cool there. Just all around Commander All-Star, fantastic reprint, expensive card. Great to see the price coming down soon. Now on to number 8, and its last reprint happened to be 8 years ago. That is City of Brass. Fantastic card in any deck that needs colors. Like 3 to 5 color Commander decks, this is a staple auto include. It's in 105,871 decks on EDH Rec, 8% of all decks because it's colorless. That's so many decks. This card is a staple, especially in 5 color decks. Like you want this card. This is one of the best 5 color lands that there is, and it was at about $25 before. So it is going to be a very welcome reprint. And a lot of people are going to want to pick up copies while it's cheaper. This card's fantastic. It sees oodles of play. Great card. You'll be able to get a more pimped out version of this card for the first time. Previously, the most pimped out versions are just the foil versions. I mean, the original Antiquities version is also extremely expensive and great pimp card. But this is going to give you an alternate art and a cool one at that. So that's exciting. I know I'll be picking up a lot of copies while it's cheaper. I make a lot of Commander decks. I'm sure I'm going to be able to use them. And if you plan on making a lot more decks and you like 3 to 5 colors, You should pick up copies as well. Staple in those decks. Awesome card, awesome reprint. Happy to see it here. Next on the list is number 7. For number 7, we have Teferi's Protection. Everybody knows Teferi's Protection. It's one of the most played white cards. And by one of the most played, I mean it's in 103,624 decks on EDH Rec. That's 18% of all decks with white. That's a lot of decks. That's insane. This card was $40 before the reprint, and it'll probably drop down to $20 to $25. I wouldn't be surprised. It's an auto include in a lot of decks and just a fantastic card. Great to see a reprint here. Very excited to pick up some extra copies. Number 6 on the list is Sensei's Divining Top. This card was about $60 before the reprint. It's in 89,061 EDH Rec decks, which is 7% of all decks because it's colorless. I feel like that number should be higher and would be if the card was cheaper, but $60 is pretty expensive. It's also reprinted at rare, which is very nice, so that should really help with the price. This card is a staple in a lot of decks. It's just a all-around great card in Commander, especially in top of deck matters decks and in competitive Commander. Fantastic. It's also the first time it's gotten a really cool looking alternate art. And the best thing about this alternate art is that's like from Neo. It's from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty style. So it looks like Sensei's Divining Top if it was made in Neo, which is really cool. I love that they did that art style with it. I think it's a really sweet little callback. It's cool and great card. Fantastic reprint. Very excited to pick up some more copies. This is a card that always holds a good price, and if you need copies, now's going to be a great time to pick it up. Now we're on to number 5. For number 5, I have Mana Drain. It could have been higher on this list, but the reason why I have it back at number 5 is just because it's gotten reprints recently, like in Commander Legends. It was at about $45 before the reprint because it was reprinted so recently, but we're going to be getting a cool new version of it with a special art, which is nice. So we have that version along with the borderless extended art, whatever you want to call it, from Commander Legends. But the Commander Legends foil treatment's pretty bad, so hopefully the foiling treatment in this set's going to be better, and we'll have a better version of Mana Drain. That'll be nice. It'll be cool to have a pimp version that's not a Pringle. It's in 100,513 EDH Rec decks, which is 16% of all blue decks. Sees tons of play. You're going to be seeing it a lot more now because it's going to get even cheaper. And this is a card that's really powerful though. It's a card that I would prefer to hold a higher price point just so you don't see it at every game. If it gets cheap enough, then it's just going to be an auto include in most blue decks. And that's just going to be annoying to have to deal with in the majority of games. Hopefully the number of decks that it's in doesn't skyrocket too much, but it's a welcome reprint anyways. Great card, great new art, excited to pick that up. And now we're on to number 4. At number 4, I have Mana Vault. This card is one of the best fast mana rocks in the format. It was $60 before the reprint, clocking in at 93,536 EDH Rec decks. That's 7% of all decks. So very heavily played mana rock and very, very powerful. Great to see a reprint, $60 before the reprint. And it has a very cool alternate art, which is very exciting. It's not the first alternate art that it's had or the first pimp version that it's had, but it's a welcome one because this card is expensive and this card's always in high demand. And more people I know are getting into CEDH, and this is a CEDH staple, so it's great to see a CEDH staple get a reprint here. That way, the format's a little bit more accessible. So for those reasons, it's number 4 on my list. Very exciting card here, very expensive, great mana rock. Hopefully you can pull a copy out of a packet you open. And now we're in the top 3. At number 3, we have Smothering Tithe. Not the most expensive card on this list, not by a lot, but it's actually the most played card on this list. It's in 165,649 decks, 29% of all decks with white in them in the format on EDH Rec. That is insane. That's insane. So many people are playing this card. This card is such a heavily played card. Thank goodness we get a reprint. It was at $45 before this reprint, and the price is just going to keep going up on this card. I don't know how much the reprint's actually going to drop the price because it's just such a high in demand card, People are going to be picking up copies right away, so this card might not see much of a drop in price, but the influx of supply is just going to be very helpful in making it more accessible for a shorter period of time. It came out right before the booster fun stuff started, so there's no cool version of the card until now, and the alternate art is awesome. I love the alternate art that they made for this card. It's an awesome reprint, a very welcome one, and just such a good card, such a staple in Commander. It's great to see it here, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the price, to see how long the price stays depressed, just because this card is such a staple. Like if you're playing white, it's almost a 1 in 3 chance that this card is going to be in your deck. That's insane. Pick up your copies while you can. Great reprint here, but it's only number 3 on the list. We have 2 ahead of it. You might be wondering what those 2 are. You probably already know, but we're going to jump into that. So number 2 on the list is Dockside Extortionist. This is a card that many people have been clamoring for it to get banned. It's a very expensive card. It was at about $65 before the reprint. I think mostly because people assumed that a reprint was coming soon for it, so the price got a little depressed. It was up to like $80 at one point. This card is in 120,676 EDH decks on EDH Rec, 20% of all red decks, and that's with it having such a high price tag. That's incredibly high. So this card is a super staple. Everybody that needs a copy is going to need to buy it now. This card is expensive and such a needed card for a lot of decks. Just very, very powerful. And it's the first time we got an alternate art version. And the regular version in the set has a new art too. So we got 2 new arts for this card. Because of the fact that it's getting reprinted here, it seems like it's going to be very unlikely that it gets banned anytime in the near future because Wizards needs to sell the set. So it seems like a very safe time to buy a copy, especially because the price is going to be depressed. Fantastic card, super welcome reprint. Definitely one of the best cards that they could have possibly reprinted in this set for Commander, but not the best. Now we're on to number 1. The number 1 best reprint, in my opinion, from Double Masters for Commander is Imperial Seal. It makes sense. It was the most expensive card that was not reserve list, period. Just the most expensive non-reserve list card in Magic. The cheapest version of the card was the Judge promo at $900 before the reprint was announced. And the Portal version was at $1,800. This card is insanely expensive. And even at those high price points, it was still in 26,211 decks on EDH Rec, 4% of all decks with black in it. That's a really high number for the price of this card. And so now that this is getting reprinted, if the price can go down enough, those numbers are going to skyrocket because this card's going to be so much more accessible out of nowhere, and it's one of the most powerful tutors in the format. Obviously, it's not as powerful as Demonic Tutor or Vampiric Tutor, but it's still very powerful, and redundancy is good inside a lot of competitive decks. This is a CDH staple. I personally have a CDH deck, and this is one of the cards I've been missing for it because of the price. Now I'll be able to get a copy for much cheaper, and I'm very excited about that. The most welcome reprint possible. Literally, there is not a card that would have been better to reprint than this card. This was the most expensive card they could have reprinted, unless they abolished the reserve list. So happy it's finally got a reprint, and it's finally going to be accessible to people at a non-astronomical price tag. And that is my top 10 best reprints from Double Masters for Commander. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you would have changed up your top 10. If there's any cards that I didn't mention that would be in your top 10, or if there's any that you think I ranked way too high or way too low. I'd love to know. So comment down below what you think. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, everybody.